It's no secret that engaging in difficult endeavors requires some type of incentive or reward. When we labor, we require an incentive to commence that labor, and we also naturally expect to be rewarded for our efforts when the work is complete. This incentive is typically embodied by monetary compensation because we evidently require money to purchase goods and services. A saying attributed to musician Noel Gallagher that many people resonate with remarks, quote, "I don't live to work, I work to live." End quote. Indeed, for many of us, we subconsciously embody this principle because we work hard to provide for ourselves and our families. We labor not only to survive, but to thrive in terms of creating the best life possible through the minimization of hardship. This means something different and unique to each person, but the underlying principle is the same. Before the outcomes that we desire can even arise, we require discipline and motivation to chart a course. We must be disciplined and motivated enough to undertake the necessary actions that will facilitate desired results. Knowing this, is being disciplined superior compared to possessing mere motivation? Can you succeed with discipline alone, without any internal or external motivation? Or are the two ideas fundamentally intertwined no matter how you slice it? Today's discussion examines the principal question: should you be disciplined or motivated? Along with the other related questions that were noted mere moments ago. I will attempt to provide some insights through an analysis of what constitutes discipline and motivation. Once that is complete, then I will compare the two side by side in order to reach an appropriate conclusion. Ultimately, in order to succeed, an individual must possess some level of discipline and motivation. The true conundrum is gauging how much of either is required and when you should lean on one more heavily compared to the other. To begin, how do we typically interpret motivation? To help answer this question, I'll recruit the Merriam-Webster dictionary yet again. One of its definitions states that motivation is, quote, "a motivating force, stimulus, or influence, incentive, drive," end quote. In other words, motivation can be a purpose, a justification, or a raison d'être, reason for being. Your justifying motive that accounts for why you execute particular actions and why you retain specific ideals. Motivation can evidently be internal or external. Examples of internal motivators are typically visions and goals that you eventually hope will become reality, like eventually owning a house you've had your sights on, traveling to particular destinations, starting a family, etc. The point is that these aspirations for the future compel action while concurrently enabling us to endure arduous challenges. If you possess a robust motive or purpose to engage in particular activities, then there'll be a greater proclivity to maintain a pursuit long term. Whereas if you lack a robust internal motive, then it'll impede or even halt your progress. Internal motivators often serve as your why you possess certain dreams, why you execute certain actions, and why you so desperately wish that certain outcomes will eventually become manifest. Nevertheless, external motivators also inspire action, but they typically operate in a different manner. The fundamental nature of existence presents several external motivators, and we must labor so we can provide food and shelter not only for ourselves, but also for our loved ones. If we fail to heed the warnings or fail to listen to these external pressures, then we'll falter and perish sooner rather than later. External motivators can be further subdivided into willful and compulsory motivators. The aforementioned example of working to survive is a compulsory, or reluctant, external motivator because if we had the choice, many people wouldn't actively choose to work, especially if all their needs and wants were taken care of. Indeed, who actively enjoys sacrificing their already limited time and energy to work a job where you can easily be replaced? Having just passed working 4 months at a full-time job now, I can certainly remark that I don't actively enjoy it. But since I'm not financially free, necessity compels me to go there. Fundamentally, this compulsory external motivator is what compels us to go to work even if we're largely unwilling to do so, day in and day out. We labor because it's an evident fact of life that the suffering will only become exacerbated if we refuse to do any work. Before I go further, I should note that money isn't everything, but the lack of money is certainly the root cause, if not a significant catalyst, for many problems and hardships. Digressing, compulsory external motivators are evidently influential, but willful, or deliberate, external motivators can be just as powerful. A common example of a willful external motivator is another person. loved ones in particular. Because of their existence and how much we care for them, they naturally compel action. Our care and concern inspires us to actively choose to sacrifice our time, our effort, and of course, our finances for them. Children exemplify this concept in the minds of their parents because although a child's mere existence serves as an external motivator, the willingness factor arises due to the love that parents have for their children. Now, there's some overlap between another person's role in providing external and internal motivation, but you get the picture. It appears that there's a circular relationship no matter how you examine internal and external motivation. One evidently influences the other, and vice versa. For example, I'm forced to reluctantly act because of compulsory external motivators, i.e., to show up and do an adequate job at work in order to financially provide for myself. However, I'm also simultaneously inspired by robust internal motivations and welcome external motivations that cause me to actively embrace difficult endeavors. The result is the realization that I can't create the life I desire without sacrifice. Internal visions and aspirations that I possess regarding the future, along with external individuals that I deeply care about, serve the ultimate purpose of ameliorating the suffering. I can endure hardships and difficulties that arise through compulsory external motivators because I have a robust internal motivator, or reason for existing and acting. This purpose, which evidently involves my loved ones, inspires me to keep going. With all that said, what happens when motivations fail us? What happens when we lose the motivation to do anything? Internal and external deliberate motivations are powerful, but they can be fleeting if we lose sight of them. What can we rely on when we're filled with doubt, when life's counterproductive forces and circumstances impede us? This is where discipline comes into play. 2 definitions of discipline, from the Merriam-Webster Dictionary again, state that it's an, quote, orderly or prescribed conduct or pattern of behavior, training that corrects, molds, or perfects the mental faculties or moral character, end quote. It seems then that discipline in this sense is interpreted as operating within a habitual mode of being, or training to develop productive habits if they haven't been ingrained thus far. Indeed, this interpretation is how I tend to perceive discipline. When internal and external motivators fail, discipline picks up the slack. To demonstrate this point, I'll use myself as an example once again. For the last 5 years, I've had chronic pain in my groin and it has negatively affected me no matter what I do. The pain is most severe when I sit or stand for prolonged periods, but it varies in intensity with exercise as well. Although I've had treatment for this condition, including physiotherapy and 1 surgery, pain continues to detrimentally affect my daily activities and satisfaction. One aspiration that I possess is to become as strong as possible, physically and mentally. Weightlifting is a means that I utilize to accomplish this goal, but as you can readily understand, the chronic pain has frequently hindered my progress. I have to be cognizant of what exercises I do and how much weight I lift. Doing too much, even when I think it's more or less manageable, will aggravate the discomfort after the fact. The sometimes excruciating pain is evidently difficult to manage, and it has frequently prevented me from working out on certain days. This resistance overcame my internal and external motivations, but on the occasions where I refused to allow pain to hinder me, it was my discipline that did this. Ingrained habits fundamentally encapsulate the nature of discipline, and they're immensely vital when motivators fail. In your own life, you evidently realize this fact. Say that you set a new goal to wake up early at 5:30 a.m. every day, including weekends, in order to be productive. Your internal motivator, justification, or purpose for doing so may be valid and strong, but we're evidently human. Performing something like this is naturally arduous because, let's be honest, nobody truly enjoys waking up extremely early in the morning for its own sake, especially when the weather is cold, dark, and miserable outside. However, if you discipline yourself to continually wake up early, then you'll instinctually do so without consciously realizing it. Furthermore, even on those mornings when you really want to hit the snooze button and fall back asleep, your ingrained discipline will overcome this urge. Hence, as we understand, discipline essentially fills in the gaps left by the limitations of motivation. So, to conclude, should you aspire to be disciplined or motivated? As this examination has revealed thus far, motivations have their fair share of limitations and shortcomings. They only go so far, hence the necessity for perpetual reminders of why we're executing particular actions and retaining certain beliefs. As I articulate my thoughts and write them down in this script, I'm presently listening to music, which is evidently an external source of motivation. Music helps me focus, but it also motivates me when I'm initially reluctant to complete difficult endeavors, such as writing a long academic paper, or in this case, gather my thoughts for my next video. When we watch motivational videos, they evidently serve the same purpose, to rejuvenate our motivation and reignite the great aspirations within us. An extreme example is the conferences that people attend where a supposedly successful person provides motivational advice through a feel-good speech. While they're beneficial to a degree, they can also produce the opposite effect, keeping you trapped in momentary states of hypermotivation where you feel inspired to operate outside your comfort zone, but not long after, the complacency returns. Life's difficulties and hardships overcome you once again and you lose your motivation. Therefore, while you should be motivated and strong motives, purposes, and reasons are necessary for achievement, they aren't sufficient on their own. Discipline will fill the gaps left by incomplete motivations, and discipline will take you where mere motivation cannot. You may aspire to become a doctor, or a lawyer, or achieve some other ambitious goal, but unless you cement the necessary habits, then you won't arrive there. It's easy to say that you'll do something, but it's another issue to follow through with that commitment. Something I'm well aware of in my personal experience with physical activity, athletics, and academics, studying. You might remark, alright, I get that becoming disciplined is imperative, but if I'm currently undisciplined, then how do I go about building discipline? My advice, surprise, surprise, is that you must commence with small baby steps. The more ambitious of a goal you create when you're about to take your initial steps, the more likely you'll quit somewhere down the line. Losing weight, or getting in better shape, is a commonplace example where you must start small. Begin by walking a certain distance, then fast walking, then light jogging, and finally, progress to full-on running. For weights, start light, higher repetitions, lower weight, fewer sets, and then gradually build up to lower repetitions with more sets and heavier weights. Simplified, I know, but it's crucial to not overcomplicate things as this often increases resistance and the likelihood of giving up. Doing too much too soon is a very real phenomena, despite what others may say to the contrary. Whatever goal you have in mind, if you create an action plan that contains manageable, logical, and sequential components, then you're more likely to see it through. Ultimately, it comes down to you though, because you can have all the tools you need to succeed and still fail. Therefore, you must possess robust ambitions and goals with sufficient motivators or reasons to fulfill those goals, but you must also hone the discipline that will carry you through the doubtful moments, the inevitable low periods in life where the path forward appears less certain and retaining hope is more arduous.